Welcome to Tales by Felix, where every story unlocks a new world. Remember to subscribe, like and share. Let's begin. Elara's heart thudded like a war drum, each beat threatening to unravel her composure. The silk gown, Anya's gown, clung to her skin, its intricate lace scratching her arms as she glided down the aisle. The cathedral's vaulted ceiling loomed above, its stained glass windows casting kaleidoscopic light that felt more like judgment than blessing. Her mother's voice echoed in her mind, "This is our only chance, Elara. You must be Anya. You must save us." The weight of the lie pressed harder than the gown's corset. Her family's crumbling estate, the debts piling like autumn leaves, the whispered threats from creditors, it all rested on her shoulders. She wasn't Elara today. She was Anya, her vibrant, manipulative sister who had fled this arranged marriage to chase a fleeting dream of fame. The pact, forged decades ago between their family and the enigmatic billionaire Liam Thorne, demanded a bride. Anya was the chosen one, but Elara was the sacrifice. She forced a smile, her lips trembling as she approached the altar. The crowd murmured, their eyes dissecting her every move. "Do they know?" she wondered, panic clawing at her throat. Her mother, seated in the front pew, gave a subtle nod, her face a mask of steely resolve. Elara's gaze darted to the man waiting for her, Liam Thorne, a figure of quiet power, his face turned slightly toward her. His eyes, hidden behind dark glasses, saw nothing. He was blind, a fact that should have made her deception easier. Yet, as she drew closer, a chill skittered down her spine. His stillness was unnerving, like a predator sensing prey. "Miss Anya," the officiant intoned, his voice slicing through her thoughts. Elara flinched, nearly tripping on the hem of the gown. She caught herself, her breath hitching, and stepped beside Liam. His scent, sandalwood and something sharper, like a winter forest, enveloped her. She stole a glance at him, noting the sharp cut of his jaw, the faint scar tracing his left temple. He was younger than she'd expected, perhaps early 30s, but his presence filled the space like a storm about to break. "Do you, Anya Elizabeth Harrow, take this man?" The words blurred into a haze. Elara's mouth moved, reciting vows she didn't feel, her voice a stranger's. Liam's hand, warm and steady, took hers to slip on the ring. His touch sent a jolt through her, not of fear, but of something she couldn't name. As the ceremony ended, the crowd erupted in applause, but Liam's expression remained unreadable. Outside, as they descended the cathedral steps, a reporter shoved a microphone toward her. "Mrs. Thorne, how does it feel to marry one of the world's richest men?" Elara froze, her tongue leaden. Liam's hand tightened on her arm, a subtle anchor. "She's overwhelmed," he said smoothly, his voice low and commanding. "Give her time." The crowd parted like water, and he guided her to the waiting car, his touch both protective and possessive. Inside, silence stretched taut. Elara clutched the bouquet, its petals wilting under her grip. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice barely audible. Liam tilted his head, as if catching a faint melody. "For what?" he asked, his tone curious but guarded. "For handling that," she stammered. He nodded, a ghost of a smile flickering. "You'll find I'm good at handling things, Anya." The name stung like a slap, and Elara turned to the window, her reflection a stranger in borrowed silk. Liam Thorne stood at the altar, a statue carved from shadow and resolve. The world saw his blindness as weakness, but he'd turned it into a weapon. His other senses were his eyes. Every rustle of fabric, every shift in the air, every heartbeat told a story. As Elara approached, he sensed a dissonance. Her steps were too hesitant, her breath too uneven. Anya, from their brief meetings, had moved with predatory confidence, her jasmine scent sharp and deliberate. This woman's fragrance was softer, like wildflowers after rain. He tilted his head, parsing the anomaly. The crowd's whispers, the officiant's droning, all faded as he focused on her. Her hand trembled when he took it, her skin cool despite the summer heat. When she spoke her vows, her voice wavered, not with emotion, but with something deeper. Fear. Guilt. Liam's intuition, honed by years of navigating a sightless world, screamed that this was not Anya. As they left the cathedral, her faltering response to the reporter confirmed it. Anya would have preened, her words polished for the cameras. This woman shrank from attention. In the car, her whispered gratitude caught him off guard. It was raw, unguarded, unlike Anya's calculated charm. "You'll find I'm good at handling things, Anya," he said, testing her. The silence that followed was heavy, her breath catching like a snagged thread. At the Thorn Estate, a sprawling fortress of stone and glass, Liam led her inside. The air was thick with the scent of polished wood and roses. "Your rooms are in the east wing," he said, pausing at the grand staircase. "Mine are in the west. We'll dine together tonight." Her soft "oh" was barely audible, but he caught the tremor in it. "Is something wrong?" he asked, turning toward her. "No, it's a lot," she said, her voice strained. "This place is overwhelming." Liam nodded, filing away her hesitation. "You'll adjust," he said, his tone neutral but probing. "Unless there's something you'd like to tell me?" The question hung like a blade. Her sharp inhale was answer enough. "No," she said too quickly. "Nothing." He let it pass for now. As her footsteps faded up the stairs, Liam stood in the foyer, his mind racing. Whoever she was hiding something. And he would uncover it, not with his eyes, but with the relentless precision of a man who saw more than most. Elara's rooms were a paradox of luxury and loneliness. The four-poster bed, draped in velvet, dwarfed her. Crystal chandeliers glittered coldly, and the view of manicured gardens felt like a taunt. She was a prisoner in a palace, her every move shadowed by the lie she lived. The east wing, with its endless corridors, echoed with her footsteps, each one a reminder of the chasm between her and Liam. She avoided him when she could, taking meals in her rooms, claiming fatigue. But at dinner that first night, she had no choice. The dining room was a cavern of mahogany and candlelight, the table stretching absurdly long for two. Liam sat at the head, his dark glasses glinting. "Join me," he said, gesturing to the chair beside him. Elara sat, her hands twisting in her lap. The meal was silent at first, the clink of silverware deafening. Then Liam spoke. "Tell me about yourself, Anya." Her fork froze mid-air. "What do you want to know?" she asked, her voice tight. He leaned back, his fingers steepled. "Anything. What makes you, you?" The question was a trap, and she knew it. Anya would have spun a tale of glamour and ambition. Elara floundered. "I like simple things," she said, grasping for truth. "Reading. Walks in the rain." His brow lifted slightly. "Rain?" he echoed, intrigued. "Why?" She hesitated, then let a fragment of herself slip. "It feels honest. Like the world isn't pretending to be anything it's not." His lips twitched, almost a smile. "An interesting choice," he murmured. Anya never mentioned rain. Panic flared, but he changed the subject, asking about her favorite books. She relaxed slightly, mentioning dog-eared novels she'd read by lamplight. His questions were gentle but relentless, peeling back layers she hadn't meant to reveal. When dinner ended, he stood, offering his arm. "Good night, Anya," he said, his voice soft but weighted. She mumbled a reply, fleeing to her rooms, her heart racing. He was too perceptive, too close to the truth. Days blurred into weeks, each one a tightrope walk. Elara wandered the estate, avoiding Liam's wing, but his presence lingered, in the scent of his cologne on a passing servant, in the books he'd touched in the library. Loneliness gnawed at her, sharper than fear. She was a ghost in her own life, tethered to a man who saw nothing yet seemed to see everything. Liam navigated his world with a quiet ferocity. Blindness had stolen his sight at 16, but it had sharpened his other senses to a lethal edge. He heard the world's secrets in its silences, felt its truths in its vibrations. Elara was a mystery he couldn't ignore. She wasn't Anya, he was certain now. Anya's confidence had bordered on cruelty. Elara's every move was laced with uncertainty, a quiet strength beneath the fear. He observed her in fragments. At breakfast, her spoon scraped the bowl too softly, as if afraid to demand space. In the garden, her steps slowed near the lavender, her breath lingering, a sign she savored it. When she spoke, her voice held a warmth Anya's never had, but it trembled when she said, "Anya." He catalogued these details, building a portrait of a woman who didn't belong in this charade. One morning, he found her in the conservatory, humming softly as she touched a fern. He paused, listening. "You're fond of plants," he said, stepping closer. She gasped, spinning toward him. "I didn't hear you," she said, flustered. "You move so quietly." He smiled faintly. "I've had practice." "Why the fern?" She hesitated, then answered, "It's resilient. It thrives in shadow." Her words held a quiet ache, and he filed it away. "Walk with me," he said, offering his arm. She took it, her touch light but steady. As they strolled the gravel paths, he asked about her childhood. Her answers were vague, skirting Anya's history, but she let slip a memory of climbing trees with her sister. "We'd pretend we were explorers," she said, a smile in her voice. "Sounds like you were close," he said, probing. Her silence was heavy. "Once," she whispered, and he sensed a wound too raw to touch. Each encounter sharpened his certainty. Elara was an impostor, but not a schemer. Her deception was born of necessity, not malice. And beneath it, she was someone worth knowing, someone he wanted to know. Liam's library was a sanctuary of leather and ink, its shelves stretching to the ceiling. He summoned Elara there one evening, his voice carrying a quiet command. "Read to me, Mrs. Thorne," he said, seated in a wingback chair, his hands folded. Elara stood frozen, a book trembling in her grip. "What should I read?" she asked, her voice a whisper. "Whatever moves you," he said, his tone inviting but firm. She chose a worn copy of Jane Eyre, her fingers tracing its spine. As she began, her voice was reedy, stumbling over words. Liam listened, not to the story, but to her, her hesitations, her soft gasps at certain lines. Slowly, she found her rhythm, her voice warming like a flame catching kindling. "I am no bird, and no net ensnares me," she read, her tone fierce yet fragile. Liam leaned forward, drawn to the raw emotion she didn't hide. When she paused, he spoke. "You feel that line, don't you?" She startled, the book dipping. Yes," she admitted. "Why?" he pressed, his voice gentle. She hesitated, then said, "It's about being free. Being yourself." Her words hung heavy, and he sensed the truth she couldn't say. "Keep reading," he urged, and she did, her voice growing bolder. 4 hours, they sat, the story weaving a fragile bridge between them. When she stopped, her throat raw, he said, "You have a gift, Elara." Her breath caught at her real name, a slip he hadn't intended. "Anya," he corrected smoothly, but her silence screamed her fear. "Thank you," she whispered, standing. "Good night." As her footsteps faded, Liam sat motionless, the book's echo lingering. Elara wasn't just hiding her name, she was hiding a soul too bright for the shadows she'd been forced into. And he wanted to draw her into the light. The library became Elara's refuge, a place where the weight of her life felt lighter. Each evening, Liam's request was the same, "Read to me, Mrs. Thorne." His voice, low and resonant, carried an invitation she couldn't resist. She chose books that spoke to her, poetry by Emily Dickinson, novels by the Brontes, texts that let her voice tremble with truth. Tonight, she read from Wuthering Heights, her words painting Heathcliff's torment with a rawness that mirrored her own. Liam sat across from her, his dark glasses reflecting the firelight, his stillness unnerving. He didn't interrupt, but his presence was a pulse, alive and attentive. When she reached a passage about love's destructive pull, her voice cracked. "I am Heathcliff," she read, her throat tight. She paused, the book trembling in her hands. Liam tilted his head, as if catching a scent on the wind. "You understand that kind of love," he said, not a question but a statement. Elara's heart stuttered. "It's intense," she said, dodging. He leaned forward, his hands clasped. "Tell me, Anya, what does love mean to you?" The name stung, but his tone was gentle, coaxing. She clutched the book like a shield. "Love is sacrifice," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Giving up pieces of yourself for someone else." Her mother's face flashed in her mind, her desperate pleas echoing. Liam's brow furrowed, as if he heard the unspoken. "Don't just read the words, Elara," he said, his voice soft but piercing. "Feel them." The use of her real name again, deliberate this time, sent a jolt through her. She froze, her breath shallow. "I mean, Anya," he corrected, but his tone held a challenge. I'm trying," she stammered, her hands shaking as she closed the book. He nodded, almost imperceptibly. "You're doing more than trying. You're revealing yourself." The words hung between them, heavy with meaning. Elara's pulse raced. Did he know? Or was he testing her? "I should go," she said, standing abruptly. "It's late." Liam rose, his movements fluid, and stepped closer. "Stay a moment," he said, his voice a quiet command. "You don't need to hide here." Her eyes burned, but she nodded, unable to speak. As she left, his words echoed in her mind, a dangerous invitation to be real in a world built on lies. The library's warmth had become a trap, its intimacy a blade poised above Elara's heart. She read to Liam each night, her voice a fragile thread weaving them closer. But tonight, as she read from the scarlet letter, Hester Prynne's shame mirrored her own. Her voice wavered, and the words blurred on the page. She stopped, the book slipping from her fingers, hitting the floor with a thud that shattered the silence. Liam's head snapped up, his glasses glinting. "Elara," he said, his voice low and unwavering. "You are not Anya, are you?" The question was a thunderclap, splitting her world apart. Her knees buckled, and she sank into the chair, her hands gripping the armrests. I don't know what you mean," she whispered, but her voice betrayed her, quivering like a leaf in a storm. "Don't lie to me," he said, his tone calm but unyielding. "I've known since the cathedral. Your steps, your scent, your voice, they're not hers. Why are you here, pretending to be her?" His words were a scalpel, precise and relentless. Elara's chest heaved, tears burning her eyes. She wanted to run, but his presence pinned her in place, a force she couldn't escape. "I'm sorry," she choked out, her voice breaking. "I didn't want this. My mother, she made me. Our family was drowning in debt, and Anya, she ran away. The pact with your family demanded a bride, and I was the only one left." The confession poured out, a torrent of guilt and fear. "I didn't want to lie to you, Liam. I swear it." He sat motionless, his face unreadable. The silence stretched, suffocating. Then he spoke, his voice softer but laced with steel. "You thought I wouldn't notice? That I'm too blind to see the truth?" The accusation stung, but his tone held no malice, only a quiet intensity. Elara shook her head, tears spilling. I thought it wouldn't matter. That you'd want Anya's name, not me." Liam leaned forward, his hands clasped tightly. "And who are you, Elara?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. The question pierced her, deeper than any blade. "I'm nobody," she said, her voice raw. "Just a girl trying to save her family." His lips pressed into a thin line, and for a moment, she thought he'd dismiss her. Instead, he said, "You're more than that. I've heard it in your voice, felt it in this room. Don't hide from me now." The vulnerability in his words undid her. She buried her face in her hands, sobbing, the weight of her deception crashing down. Liam didn't move, but his presence was a quiet anchor, holding her through the storm. Elara's sobs filled the library, each one a release of the fear she'd carried for weeks. She told Liam everything, her mother's threats, the crumbling estate, Anya's abandonment. "She left a note," Elara said, her voice hoarse. "Said she'd rather die than marry a man she didn't know. So Mother turned to me. She said I owed it to the family, that I was nothing without them." Her words tumbled out, jagged and raw. "I didn't want to hurt you, Liam. I had no choice." Liam listened, his face a mask of stillness. The fire crackled, casting shadows that danced across his sharp features. When she finished, he leaned back, his fingers drumming lightly on the armrest. "You had a choice," he said, his voice measured. "You could have told me the truth that first day. Why didn't you?" The question wasn't accusing, but it demanded honesty. Elara wiped her tears, her hands shaking. "I was afraid," she admitted. "Afraid you'd send me away, that my family would lose everything. Afraid you'd hate me." Her voice dropped to a whisper. "I still am." Liam's expression softened, just a fraction. "I don't hate you," he said. "I despise that you were forced into this. That you believed a lie was your only path." His words hit like a wave, washing away some of her guilt but leaving a new ache. "You don't understand," she said, her voice trembling. "I'm not Anya. I'm not enough. She was the beautiful one, the charming one. I'm just Elara." Liam tilted his head, as if seeing her through the darkness of his blindness. "And Elara is enough," he said, his voice firm. "More than enough." The sincerity in his tone shook her. She stared at him, her heart pounding. "Why aren't you angry?" she asked, almost pleading. "I lied to you. I tricked you." Liam's lips curved into a faint, bittersweet smile. "Because I've seen more of you than you realize. Your voice, your kindness, the way you linger over words you love, you can't fake that. Anya never had that depth." Elara's breath caught, her mind reeling. He stood, moving closer, his presence overwhelming. "We'll deal with this, Elara," he said. "But from now on, no more lies. Can you promise me that?" She nodded, tears falling anew. "I promise," she whispered. He reached out, his hand finding her shoulder with unerring precision. "Good," he said. "Now go rest. We have much to discuss tomorrow." Morning brought no relief. Elara woke with a leaden heart, Liam's words echoing in her mind. "Elara is enough." She stood at her window, staring at the gardens below, their beauty a cruel contrast to her turmoil. The truth was out, but what now? Would he annul the marriage? Expose her to the world? She dressed mechanically, choosing a simple gray dress, as if shedding Anya's glamour might make her feel less like a fraud. At breakfast, Liam was already at the table, his posture relaxed but alert. "Good morning, Elara," he said, emphasizing her name. She flinched, sitting across from him. "Good morning," she murmured, her hands twisting in her lap. The silence was oppressive, broken only by the clink of his coffee cup. Finally, he spoke. "I've been thinking about last night," he said. "About what you've sacrificed." She looked up, startled. "Sacrifice?" she echoed. He nodded, his glasses hiding his eyes but not his intensity. "You gave up your identity for your family. That's not weakness, Elara. It's courage. But it's also a wound." His words cut deep, exposing a truth she'd buried. "I didn't have a choice," she said, her voice brittle. "My mother." "Your mother used you," he interrupted, his tone sharp but not unkind. "She made you believe your worth lies in what you do for others. I despise that." Elara's eyes burned, but she held his gaze, or where she thought it would be. "She's my mother," she said defensively. "She was desperate." "And you paid the price," Liam said, his voice softening. "But you don't have to anymore. You're not invisible, Elara. Not to me." The words were a lifeline, but they terrified her. Being seen, truly seen, was a vulnerability she wasn't ready for. "What happens now?" she asked, her voice small. "Do you send me away?" Liam's jaw tightened. "Do you want to leave?" he asked. The question caught her off guard. Did she? The estate was a cage, but Liam's presence, his unexpected kindness, was a tether she hadn't expected. "I don't know," she admitted. He nodded, as if expecting that. "Then stay," he said simply. "Let's find out who Elara is, together." The offer was a gift, fragile and terrifying. She nodded, unable to speak, her heart a tangled mess of hope and fear. The fragile piece shattered 2 weeks later. Elara was in the garden, sketching the roses, when the roar of a car engine broke the quiet. A sleek convertible screeched to a halt, and Anya emerged, a vision in crimson, her blonde hair gleaming. Elara's pencil snapped in her hand. Anya's return had been a specter in her nightmares, and now it was real. "Elara!" Anya's voice was a whip, sharp and commanding. She stormed across the lawn, her heels sinking into the grass. "What the hell do you think you're doing?" Elara stood, her sketchbook falling. "Anya, she began, but Anya cut her off. "You stole my life!" she shrieked, her face twisted with rage. "You think you can just waltz in and take my place?" Servants hovered, uncertain, as Anya's tirade drew attention. Elara's heart pounded, but before she could respond, Liam's voice cut through the chaos. "Enough!" He stood at the garden's edge, his cane tapping lightly, his presence a quiet storm. Anya spun toward him, her charm flipping on like a switch. "Liam, darling," she purred, stepping closer. "I'm so sorry. I was delayed, but I'm here now. This imposter needs to go." Elara's stomach churned, but Liam's expression remained impassive. "Is that so?" he said, his tone deceptively calm. "And why should I believe you, Anya?" Her smile faltered. "Because I'm the real bride," she said, her voice syrupy. "She's nothing. A liar who tricked you." She reached for his arm, but he stepped back, his cane a barrier. "I see her, Anya," Liam said, his voice resonating with conviction. "I see Elara for who she is. You, on the other hand," he tilted his head as if dissecting her. "You're the one who ran. Why are you here now?" Anya's eyes widened, her facade cracking. I heard about the marriage," she stammered. "I had to fix this mistake." Liam's laugh was cold. "The only mistake was the pact that brought us here. Elara didn't choose this, but she stayed. You didn't." Anya's face flushed, her charm replaced by venom. "She's a fraud," she spat, turning to Elara. "Tell him, you coward." Elara's hands shook, but Liam's voice steadied her. "She already has," he said. "And I've chosen to listen." Anya's mouth opened, then closed, her fury palpable. Liam turned to Elara, his voice softening. "Go inside," he said. "This is done." Elara nodded, her legs unsteady as she fled, Anya's glare burning into her back. Liam faced Anya, his voice low. "Leave, Anya. And don't come back." The finality in his tone was a wall, unyielding and absolute. The air in the Thorn Estate's grand hall crackled with tension, the echoes of Anya's accusations lingering like a storm's aftermath. Elara stood frozen near the staircase, her hands clenched, as Anya faced Liam, her crimson dress a stark contrast to the muted elegance of the room. "You're making a mistake, Liam," Anya hissed, her voice dripping with venom. "She's a fraud, a nobody who tricked you into this marriage. I'm the one you were promised." Liam's posture was unyielding, his cane tapping once against the marble floor, a sharp punctuation. "You speak of promises, Anya," he said, his tone icy and precise, "but you broke yours the moment you fled." Elara stayed. His words cut through Anya's bravado, her eyes narrowing. She turned to Elara, her smile a blade. "Tell him, sister. Tell him how you schemed to steal my life." Elara's throat tightened, shame and defiance warring within her. "I didn't want this," she said, her voice trembling but clear. "You left, Anya. You left us all to clean up your mess." Anya laughed, a harsh, brittle sound. "Oh, please. You've always been jealous, Elara. Hiding behind your books, pretending to be noble while you snatched my future." She stepped closer, her perfume sharp and cloying. "You think he'll love you? A pathetic stand-in." The word stung, but Elara held her ground, her eyes flickering to Liam. His face was unreadable, but his hand tightened on his cane, a subtle sign of his restraint. "Enough," he said, his voice a low rumble that silenced Anya's tirade. "You've said your piece, Anya. Now leave." Anya's jaw dropped, her confidence faltering. "You can't be serious," she sputtered. "I'm the real bride." Liam stepped forward, his presence towering despite his stillness. "I see more than you think," he said, his voice laced with quiet menace. "I see a woman who ran from responsibility, who'd rather manipulate than face the truth. Elara may have worn your name, but she's shown more courage than you ever will." Anya's face twisted, her hands balling into fists. "You'll regret this," she spat, glaring at Elara. "Both of you." She stormed out, the slam of the door echoing like a gunshot. Elara's knees buckled, and she gripped the banister, her breaths shallow. Liam turned to her, his voice softening. "Are you all right?" he asked. She nodded, though her eyes burned with unshed tears. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "For everything." He shook his head, stepping closer. "You owe no apologies. Not to her. Not to me." His words were a balm, but the weight of Anya's venom lingered, a poison Elara couldn't shake. In the days following Anya's departure, the estate felt both quieter and heavier, as if the walls themselves held their breath. Elara avoided Liam, retreating to her rooms, her sketchbook her only solace. She drew the garden roses, their thorns sharper in her mind than on the page. Anya's words echoed, pathetic stand-in, and Elara wondered if she'd ever escape the shadow of her sister's name. Liam found her in the conservatory one afternoon, her pencil scratching softly against paper. "You've been hiding," he said, his voice gentle but firm as he settled onto a nearby bench. She flinched, closing her sketchbook. "I needed time," she said, avoiding his gaze, or where she thought it would be. "Anya, she wasn't entirely wrong. I'm not who you were meant to marry." Liam's brow furrowed, his fingers tracing the edge of his cane. "Do you think I care about a pact made before I was born?" he asked, his tone sharp with conviction. "I married you, Elara. Not a name, not a promise. You." His words were a lifeline, but they terrified her. "You don't know me," she said, her voice breaking. "Not really." "Then let me," he said, leaning forward. "Tell me who Elara is. Not the sister, not the stand-in. You." The sincerity in his voice cracked something open in her. She hesitated, then spoke, her words halting. "I'm quiet. I love stories, gardens, the way rain smells. I've always been in Anya's shadow, but I never wanted her life. I just wanted to be enough." Liam listened, his face softening. "You are enough," he said, echoing his words from the library. "More than enough. Anya's charm was a mask. Yours is real." Elara's eyes burned, and she looked away, her hands trembling. "Why are you so kind to me?" she asked. "After everything I did." He smiled, a rare, genuine curve of his lips. "Because I see you, Elara. Not with my eyes, but with everything else. Your kindness, your courage, the way your voice lights up when you read. I don't need sight to know who you are." His words were a shield, protecting her from the doubts Anya had sown. She swallowed hard, her heart aching with a hope she didn't dare name. "Stay for dinner," he said, standing. "No more hiding." She nodded, a small smile breaking through. "Okay," she whispered. As he left, his cane tapping softly, Elara felt a shift, a fragile trust taking root, stronger than any lie. Weeks passed, and the estate began to feel less like a prison. Elara and Liam fell into a quiet rhythm, shared meals, walks in the garden, evenings in the library. He no longer called her Anya, and the absence of the name was a freedom she hadn't expected. But with that freedom came vulnerability. Being seen as Elara meant exposing her flaws, her fears, her quiet dreams. One evening, as they sat by the fire, Liam asked her to read again. She chose a collection of Rumi's poetry, her voice steady but soft. "Beyond ideas of wrongdoing and right-doing, there is a field. I'll meet you there," she read, her words lingering in the air. Liam tilted his head, a faint smile playing on his lips. "You believe in that field, don't you?" he asked. "A place where truth matters more than mistakes." She nodded, closing the book. "I want to," she said. "But I've spent so long pretending, I'm not sure I know how to find it." Liam leaned forward, his voice low. "You're already there, Elara. You just don't see it yet." His words were a mirror, reflecting a strength she hadn't recognized. She looked at him, her heart pounding. "How do you do that?" she asked. "See things I can't." He chuckled, a rare sound that warmed the room. "I've had years to listen, to feel what others overlook. You're not as hidden as you think." He paused, then added, "Tell me something true. Something you've never told anyone." The request caught her off guard, but his gaze, sightless yet piercing, urged her to speak. "I'm afraid of being forgotten," she admitted, her voice barely audible. "Of being nothing." Liam's expression softened, a flicker of pain crossing his face. "You will never be nothing," he said. "Not to me." The words were a vow, unspoken but binding. Elara's breath caught, and for the first time, she felt the weight of her lie lift, replaced by a tentative hope. They talked late into the night, sharing fragments of their lives, his childhood accident, her love of sketching, their shared fear of being unseen. Each word built a bridge, fragile but real, between their hearts. Months later, the library glowed with candlelight, its shelves a silent witness to their growing bond. Elara had found a rhythm with Liam, a quiet intimacy born of shared truths. Tonight, He'd asked her to meet him there, his voice carrying an unusual weight. She arrived, her heart fluttering, to find him standing by the fireplace, a small velvet box in his hand. "Elara," he began, his voice steady but laced with emotion, "we started with a lie, but we've built something real. I don't want a marriage bound by a pact or pretense. I want you, for who you are, not who you pretended to be." He opened the box, revealing a simple silver ring, its single emerald glinting like a promise. "Marry me." This time, as Elara, with no shadows between us. Tears welled in her eyes, not of sorrow but of overwhelming joy. The ring wasn't ostentatious like the one from their first ceremony. It was honest, like him. "Liam," she whispered, her voice trembling, "are you sure? After everything?" He stepped closer, his hand finding hers with unerring precision. "I've never been more sure," he said. "I see you, Elara. I love you." The word love shattered her defenses. She nodded, tears spilling. "Yes," she said, her voice a vow. "Yes, Liam." He slipped the ring onto her finger, his touch warm and steady. For a moment, they stood in silence, the fire's crackle the only sound. Then he pulled her close, his lips brushing her forehead. "No more lies," he murmured. "Just us." Elara clung to him, her heart soaring. For the first time, she felt truly seen, not as Anya's shadow, but as herself. The library, once a place of fear, was now a sanctuary of truth, its books bearing witness to a love born from honesty. The days following Liam's proposal were a blur of quiet joy. Elara wore the emerald ring like a talisman, its weight a reminder of her new beginning. But one shadow remained, her mother. Elara knew she had to confront her, to sever the chains of guilt that had bound her to this deception. She asked Liam to arrange a meeting at the estate, her resolve steeling with each passing hour. Her mother arrived, her face a mask of calculated concern. "Elara, darling," she began, her voice syrupy, "I heard about Anya's outburst. I'm so sorry you had to endure that." Elara stood tall, her hands steady. "No more apologies, mother," she said, her voice firm. "I need to say something." Her mother's eyes narrowed, but she nodded, gesturing for Elara to continue. "You made me believe I was nothing without this lie," Elara said, her words measured but fierce. "You pushed me to be Anya, to sacrifice myself for a family that never saw me. But Liam did. He saw me when I couldn't see myself." Her mother's face paled, her lips parting in protest, but Elara pressed on. "I forgive you, because I understand you were desperate. But I'm done living for you." The words hung heavy, a release of years of pain. Her mother's eyes glistened, but her voice was sharp. "You think you're free? You're nothing without us." Liam, who had been listening from the doorway, stepped forward. "She's everything," he said, his voice a quiet thunder. "And she's enough without you." His words silenced her mother, who stood, her composure cracking. "I love him, mother," Elara said, her voice soft but unyielding. "Not because of a pact, but because he sees me. I hope one day you can see me too." Her mother left without a word, her silence a concession. Elara turned to Liam, her eyes bright with tears. "Thank you," she whispered. He took her hand, his thumb brushing the emerald ring. "You did that yourself," he said. "I just stood by you." That night, Elara slept soundly for the first time in months, the weight of her mother's expectations gone. She was no longer a stand-in, but a woman who had chosen her own path, a path that led to Liam, to love, to herself. Elara stood in the garden, the morning sun filtering through the roses, their petals soft against her fingertips. The confrontation with her mother lingered, a bruise that ached but no longer bled. She'd expected anger or sorrow to consume her, but instead, she felt light, unburdened. Forgiving her mother hadn't erased the past, but it had freed her to step into her own future. Liam found her there, his cane tapping softly against the gravel path. "You're up early," he said, his voice warm with a teasing lilt. She smiled, turning toward him. "I couldn't sleep," she admitted. "Not in a bad way. Just thinking." He tilted his head, his glasses catching the sunlight. "About what?" he asked, settling onto a stone bench beside her. "About everything," she said, sitting next to him. "My mother, Anya, the lies. And you." She paused, her fingers tracing the emerald ring. I told her I forgave her, but it was more than that. It was letting go. Liam's hand found hers, his touch steady. That takes strength, he said. More than most people have. Elara's throat tightened. I couldn't have done it without you, she said. You saw me when I was invisible, even to myself. Liam's lips curved into a rare, genuine smile. You were never invisible, Elara. You just needed someone to remind you. His words were a balm, soothing the last of her doubts. They sat in companionable silence, the garden alive with birdsong. Then Elara spoke, her voice tentative but resolute. I want to start over, Liam. Not as Anya's shadow, but as me. I want to paint, to read, to live without fear. He squeezed her hand, his voice low. Then do it. I'll be here, every step. The promise was simple, but it anchored her, a foundation for the life she was finally ready to claim. That afternoon, Elara wrote a letter to her mother, not out of obligation, but choice. I forgive you, and I hope you find peace, she wrote, her pen steady. She sealed it, knowing she might never get a reply, but that was enough. As she slipped the letter into the mailbox, she felt the final chains of her past fall away, replaced by a quiet, fierce freedom. A year after Anya's confrontation, Elara and Liam stood beneath a canopy of stars in a secluded corner of the estate's grounds. The air was cool, scented with lavender and pine, and the world felt hushed, as if holding its breath for them. They had chosen a private ceremony, not for society's eyes, but for themselves, a vow to honor the truth they'd fought for. Elara wore a simple ivory dress, its fabric soft against her skin, a far cry from the borrowed gown of their first wedding. Liam, in a tailored suit, stood beside her, his hand steady as he held hers. A local minister, sworn to secrecy, spoke softly, his words weaving their promises into the night. Do you, Elara, take Liam to be your husband, in truth and love? He asked. I do, Elara said, her voice clear and unwavering. Her eyes met Liam's face, and though he couldn't see her, she felt his gaze in the way his thumb brushed her knuckles. And you, Liam, do you take Elara, in truth and love? The minister's voice was a gentle echo. I do, Liam said, his tone rich with conviction. Always. They exchanged rings, simple bands engraved with a single word, truth. As Elara slid the ring onto Liam's finger, she whispered, I see you too, Liam. His smile was radiant, a rare glimpse of vulnerability that made her heart ache. They sealed their vows with a kiss, soft but fierce, a promise that needed no witnesses but the stars above. After the ceremony, they sat on a blanket, sharing a quiet meal of bread and wine. No grand ball this time, Liam said, a playful note in his voice. Elara laughed, leaning against him. This is better, she said. Just us. He tilted his head, as if catching the melody of her happiness. Just us, he echoed, his hand finding hers. They talked into the night, their voices weaving dreams of a future built on trust. Elara spoke of opening an art studio, Liam of funding a library for the blind. Their plans were small but profound, rooted in the love they'd forged through honesty. As the moon rose, Elara felt a peace she'd never known, her heart tethered to a man who saw her soul. Their life together unfolded like a quiet symphony, each day a note in a melody of mutual understanding. The Thorn estate, once a gilded cage, became a home. Elara transformed a sunlit room into a studio, her canvases filled with vibrant landscapes and portraits of Liam. His sharp jaw, his thoughtful tilt of the head, captured in strokes of color he'd never see but could feel through her descriptions. Liam's blindness, once a barrier, became a bridge. He'd trace her paintings with his fingers, her voice guiding him through each hue and shape. Tell me about this one, he'd say, his hand on a canvas of the garden. It's the roses at dusk, she'd reply, all purples and golds, like the skies holding its breath. He'd smile, his fingers lingering. I can see it through you. They hosted quiet dinners, inviting friends who valued substance over spectacle. Elara read to Liam each evening, their library sessions now a ritual of love rather than deception. She'd pause to share her thoughts, and he'd listen, his responses weaving their minds closer. You make the world vivid, he told her once, his voice soft. You're my eyes, Elara. She blushed, her heart swelling. And you're my courage, she said. You showed me I could be more than a shadow. Their laughter filled the room, a sound that had become their anthem. Liam's wealth funded community projects, a school for the blind, an art program for children, and Elara found purpose in helping, her quiet strength blossoming. One evening, as they walked the garden, Liam stopped, his hand tightening on hers. "I never thought I'd find this," he said, his voice raw. "A love that sees beyond my darkness." Elara squeezed his hand, her eyes bright with tears. "And I never thought I'd be seen," she whispered. "Not like this." Their embrace was a foundation, unshakable and eternal, built on the truth of who they were. Their love story spread quietly, not as gossip but as a legend among those who knew them. Friends whispered of the billionaire who saw without sight, and the woman who found herself in his vision. Elara and Liam didn't seek fame, but their authenticity drew others, a beacon for those craving connection beyond the superficial. One afternoon, a young artist visited Elara's studio, her eyes wide with awe. "How do you paint so vividly?" she asked, studying a portrait of Liam. Elara smiled, brushing paint from her hands. "I paint what I feel," she said. "Liam taught me that truth is the brightest color." The girl nodded, inspired, and Elara felt a surge of pride, not for her art, but for the life she'd built. Liam, too, found new purpose. He spoke at a conference for the visually impaired, his voice steady as he shared his story. "Sight isn't just with the eyes," he said, Elara at his side. "It's in the heart, in the way we listen, in the truths we choose to see." The audience applauded, but his focus was on Elara's hand in his, her presence a quiet strength. At home, they faced challenges together. Moments of doubt, the occasional letter from Anya demanding money, which they ignored. Elara's mother sent a single note, a hesitant apology, which Elara kept but didn't answer. "She'll find her way," Liam said, his arm around her. "And if she doesn't, you've found yours." Elara nodded, her heart full. His love was a depth she could swim in forever, a light that needed no eyes to shine. Their evenings were filled with small rituals, reading, laughing, planning. Liam's blindness was no longer a limitation but a lens, sharpening their connection to what mattered. "I see you more clearly every day," he told her one night, his voice a vow. Elara kissed him, her heart echoing his words. "And I see you," she said, "always." Years later, Elara and Liam stood on a hill overlooking the estate, the wind carrying the scent of wildflowers. Their life was a tapestry of quiet moments, Elara's paintings in galleries, Liam's advocacy transforming lives, their love a steady flame that warmed everyone around them. The estate was no longer a fortress but a haven, its doors open to those seeking truth over pretense. Elara's latest project was a children's book, illustrated with her vibrant art, about a blind prince who saw with his heart. Liam narrated the audiobook, his voice rich with emotion, and when it was released, it touched hearts worldwide. "You've given me a legacy," he told her, his hand on the book's cover. She shook her head, smiling. "We did this together," she said. "Like everything." Their anniversary was a quiet affair, a picnic under the stars where they'd exchanged their secret vows. Elara lay beside Liam, her head on his chest, his heartbeat a steady rhythm. "Do you ever miss the life you might have had?" she asked, her voice soft. He chuckled, his fingers tracing her hair. "This is the life I was meant for," he said. "You are my vision, Elara." She lifted her head, her eyes tracing his face, the scar on his temple, the curve of his smile. "And you're mine," she said, her voice thick with love. They kissed, the stars above a silent chorus, their love a truth that needed no embellishment. It had blossomed from deception into something extraordinary, a testament to the power of being seen, not by eyes, but by the heart. As they walked back to the estate, hand in hand, Elara felt the weight of her past dissolve entirely. She was no longer the girl in a borrowed gown, but a woman who had found her truest self in the love of a man who saw her soul. Their story wasn't just theirs, it was a promise that truth, when embraced, could bloom into a love that endured forever. The end.